I'm getting a divorce. My son's wife, who just got married a few days ago, blurted out these unexpected words. I was so surprised that I couldn't find any words at all. My son just had an emotional wedding a few days ago. They should be on their honeymoon right now, and yet I found her coming back here alone. And then the unbelievable statement. What on earth happened during their trip? Tears began to overflow from her eyes. All I could do was silently watch as she crumbled on the spot. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a homemaker in my 50s who raised 2 sons. When my sons were young, I found out my husband's affair and got divorced. Ever since then, I have been working from morning till night, raising my sons single-handedly. My 2 sons have contrasting personalities and had entirely different childhoods. My elder son, James, is smart and did well in school. He was able to secure a scholarship and get into a university known for being highly ranked. After graduation, he was able to get a job at a well-known major corporation. 2 years ago, he married a woman his own age from his workplace, and now they are happily living together. On the other hand, I had to constantly take care of my younger son, Ethan. When he became a middle schooler, he joined a group of delinquents and started causing trouble at school. I was called to the school many times to apologize. When he started a small fire in the school, I obviously had to compensate for the damage. Ethan, who was raised in a not-so-wealthy single-parent household, might have felt inferior to the others. His unexpressed feelings may have led to such problematic behavior. I worked hard to at least get Ethan through high school. His rebellious nature didn't improve in high school, but he managed to graduate without any major trouble, which was a relief for me. But even after graduating from high school, Ethan was still a handful for me as a mother. He managed to get a job at a factory through a relative's recommendation, but he quit after just 3 months. From then on, he led a life as a part-timer, constantly changing jobs, which was a concern for me as a parent. Moreover, Ethan was also a womanizer. It might sound like I'm just a doting mother, but Ethan is quite a handsome man. From his high school days to after graduation, he never ran out of girlfriends and would bring different women home each time. I've lost count on how many times I've lectured him on his relationships with women. Ethan started living on his own after graduating from high school, but I was always concerned whether he was causing trouble for others. And now, 5 years have passed since Ethan graduated from high school. I was worried about what would become of Ethan, who was still leading the same lifestyle. One day, Ethan said, "I have something to talk about," and came back home for the first time in a while. "Mom, I'm going to start working seriously." The first thing Ethan said was this. I had heard these words many times before. "I got a job at a company, and they're going to hire me as a regular employee." He probably knew that I wouldn't believe him. Ethan started to talk about the company where he had been accepted, as if to emphasize that he was serious this time. "Really? It's great that you found such a company." Honestly, I was surprised. In the midst of this economic downturn, it was unthinkable that a company would hire Ethan, who had only been working part-time jobs. "My current girlfriend introduced me to the workplace," he said. According to Ethan, he's currently dating a woman named Michelle. She managed to get him a job at her father's company. I should be happy that my son got a full-time job, but a part of me couldn't help but feel skeptical. I couldn't help but suspect that Ethan, a well-known womanizer, might have manipulated Michelle for his own advantage. Ethan is adept at manipulating women's hearts. I worried if Michelle was too infatuated with Ethan and overdoing things for him. He once became completely reliant on a woman when he was out of work, and I had sternly warned him about it. So I hoped he wouldn't be a burden to this woman. Despite my concerns, Ethan seemed to be working sincerely for the time being after landing the job. Previously, he never stayed in a job for more than 3 months, but he managed to work for half a year, then a year. While this is expected for a normal person, it was unusual for Ethan, who changed jobs multiple times. Then, after 3 years of working, Ethan came to visit with his girlfriend. It was Michelle, who had introduced Ethan to the company. They came to our house to make an announcement. "Mom, we're getting married." Ethan casually dropped the big news. Seeing the two of them come together, I had suspected this, but now I was hearing about my mischievous second son's marriage? "So, you two have decided this?" Seeing them standing together with serious expressions, I didn't feel like opposing. "I understand. It's the path you both chose, so move forward together." It was a bit roundabout, but I accepted their marriage. Then, Michelle's eyes filled with tears in an instant, and she began to speak. "Thank you so much. We'll work together to build a wonderful family." Michelle looked at me intently, making her vow with a trembling voice. I've been thinking this for a while, but she's a woman with a pure heart, too good for Ethan. "Michelle, take good care of this son of mine. The reason I'm hearing this happy news today is because you've supported him all this time. Thank you very much." I responded with a smile. Michelle was moved to tears, and big drops were falling from her eyes. Seeing Michelle wipe her eyes gently with a handkerchief, I felt like crying myself. I'm sure she's been taking care of Ethan, who still has some mischievous side in him. From the bottom of my heart, I thought Ethan was really lucky. "Ethan, make sure you make Michelle happy. From now on, you have to cherish Michelle more than anything." When I said this, Ethan nodded shyly. And so, Ethan and Michelle were officially engaged. The wedding was simple and solemn. It was a modern ceremony with only family and close friends in attendance. Various memories came back to me, but I sincerely wish for them to support each other as lifelong partners. I truly hope that Ethan could make Michelle, a selfless and devoted woman, happy. Shortly after the wedding, Ethan and Michelle left for their honeymoon. Considering their savings, they decided to travel within the country instead of going abroad, which I thought was a sensible decision. I expected that Michelle would take charge of their marriage and keep Ethan, who used to be a playboy, in line. But such expectations abruptly turned into despair. It was 3 days after they left for their honeymoon. When I was relaxing at home alone, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it might be, I opened the front door, and to my surprise, it was Michelle. "Michelle? What on earth happened? Weren't you on your honeymoon?" Surprised, I asked her that. In front of me, there was Michelle, with an utterly drained expression. And Ethan was nowhere to be found. Something unusual must have happened. For the time being, I invited her in, sat her down in the living room chair, and Michelle began to speak in a feeble voice. "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry. I'm divorcing him." Those words were shocking. After all, they had just gotten married a few days ago. For the bride to be speaking about divorce so soon? "Ethan, did something happen?" I hesitantly asked her. In the middle of their honeymoon, she had returned alone. Something unbearable must have occurred. After a moment of silence, Michelle quietly opened her mouth. "He was having an affair." I was speechless. These are words that should never be uttered by a newlywed bride. "He was still secretly seeing his ex-girlfriend, who he was supposed to have broken up with." What? Ethan, who had pledged an eternal vow at their wedding, was cheating? And he was secretly getting back with his ex-girlfriend? My mind was starting to spin. This shouldn't be happening. "And Ethan, he introduced that woman to me while we were on our honeymoon." When Michelle revealed this, she started to sob, covering her mouth with her right hand. I was dumbfounded, unable to find words. Introducing a mistress to your wife during your honeymoon? I'd never heard such a story. How could my son do such a terrible thing? Tears flowed down Michelle's cheeks. The sparkle in her tear-filled eyes was not the blissful one she showed just a few days ago. It was a sparkle tinged with hatred from being betrayed by the one she loved. Apparently, his ex-girlfriend was living at the place Ethan chose for their honeymoon. As shocking as that was, Ethan suddenly called her and had her come to the hotel where they were staying. It was an unthinkable event. What on earth was Ethan thinking? So, That happened, Michelle. It must have been hard. I'm truly sorry for what my son has done. All I could do was apologize, not understanding what my son was thinking. As I hugged Michelle's collapsing shoulders, I continued to listen to her thoughts. I couldn't believe what was happening before my eyes. It was too painful, and I couldn't bear it, so I left the scene immediately. When his mistress met Michelle, she must have been all over Ethan, showing her their shameful relationship, as if flaunting it. Michelle was downcast, saying she never expected this to happen, seemingly more confused and saddened than angry. I felt an increasing wave of anger contrasting with Michelle, for Ethan causing such distress to a woman who has always been his rock. I picked up my phone, and in a fit of anger, I dialed Ethan's number. To my surprise, Ethan picked up right away. Hello? Mom? What's up? Ethan's carefree voice came through the receiver. I wondered what was going through his mind when he answered. Ethan, where are you right now? I tried to start the conversation as calmly as I could. He must know that Michelle is missing. I expected him to say something about that and waited for his reply. Well, isn't it obvious? I'm on my honeymoon, enjoying it with Michelle. Did you call just to interrupt us? Ethan was still playing dumb. He didn't seem to understand why I was calling. I was more astounded than angry, but I rallied myself and raised my voice. Stop lying. Michelle is here with me. What? I heard Ethan's small, surprised voice over the phone. Then he fell silent. Come back home, right now. I told Ethan to come home immediately, suspecting he was thinking about how to deal with the situation. Ethan had even dared to lie. At this point, my mind was made up. Michelle was still crying with her head down even while I was on the phone with Ethan. I offered her the most comforting words I could say at the time. I couldn't believe my own son could be so foolish. Even after I told her about the phone call, Michelle said she didn't want to see Ethan right now. And understandably so. So I decided to handle Ethan myself for now. I called Michelle's parents to inform them of what happened. Then, I drove Michelle back to her parents' house. Her parents were also furious, needless to say. All I could do was apologize profusely on behalf of my foolish son. When I got back home, I was exhausted. Even so, I waited for my son to come home. When night fell, Ethan came back. I'm back. Ethan came into the house with a forced smile, seeming troubled. He probably still doesn't understand the gravity of what he's done. Every time I see his face, my anger just keeps rising. Ethan, ooh, you've really messed up this time. As I say this, Ethan wears a look of pure annoyance. And then, my ex-girlfriend says she's close by and wanted to see me. He's grinning like a fool, as if he might have given Michelle the wrong idea. He seems to believe he's done nothing wrong. He says his running into his ex-girlfriend was just a coincidence, and it was her who reached out to him. He makes these sorts of excuses. Ex-girlfriend? Aren't you still seeing her? Did you really call her in the middle of your honeymoon? I throw these piercing words at him. In response, Ethan, visibly embarrassed, answers, Well, we were only seeing each other occasionally. My son may say so, but I can tell. After Ethan broke up with his ex and started dating Michelle, he continued having a physical relationship with his ex. She's what you might call a friends with benefits. When I confront him about this, Ethan readily admits it, almost as if to say, What's the big deal? It's just like having a friend. We both know what it is. What's the problem? Furthermore, when Ethan told her that he was marrying Michelle, the girl suggested the location of their honeymoon where she lived. It's a lovely place full of nature, she said, and Ethan easily manipulated, took her advice. I couldn't help but feel frustrated. As soon as Ethan and Michelle arrived for their trip, this woman insisted on meeting them. Maybe she wanted to show off to Michelle that she was still close with Ethan. Or perhaps she wanted to flaunt that she was a desirable woman. Regardless, there was no doubt that her actions upset Michelle. After hearing the whole story, I finally speak. Ethan, I'm cutting our ties. What did you say? You? Clean up your own mess. I'm not getting involved. I informed Ethan that I'm severing ties. It was a decision I've made when he lied to me. I've done more than enough to clean up after this son of mine. But he's a grown man now. I have neither the inclination to cover for him anymore, nor to help him. Please, Mom, don't cut ties. For a son who disregards his devoted wife and betrays people, the least I can do is this. You've betrayed someone you should have cherished. I told you countless times to make Michelle happy. I believed that you had finally outgrown your bad habits, but I was mistaken. This is the only option left for me. Just one wrong act can turn even your family into strangers. I told this to my son Ethan. When something is broken, it can't be mended the same way again. Wait, Mom, please? Ethan suddenly starts crying and clinging to me. I wonder where his confidence from earlier, seemingly endorsing his infidelity, has gone. I couldn't help feeling pathetic at the sight of my son like this. Things with Michelle probably won't just end with a divorce. You might not be able to stay at your company either. If that happens, it's all on you. Live alone for the rest of your life so no one else gets hurt. That's the only way you can atone, I believe. Afterwards, Ethan was blindsided by a divorce request from Michelle. From Ethan's and his mistress's phones, a heap of evidence showing their adulterous meetings were obtained. Ethan, hit with an alimony demand, had no choice but to agree to the divorce. Soon after, he was laid off from the company run by Michelle's father. Michelle's father was livid, needless to say, and it was clear retaliation. So Ethan, ousted from his company, became jobless and burdened with alimony payments. He came to me in tears, but I refused to have anything to do with it. As a mother, I coldly pushed away my son, who had cheated on his wife. However, considering his character, he might run away, ignoring the alimony payments if left alone. In the end, as my duty as a parent, I introduced him to a job at a company run by an old friend of mine. To be frank, the work there is downright grueling. My friend, who had a rough youth like my son, still has a somewhat intimidating character. Ethan works under his watch. It seems like his days are filled with work from early morning till late at night. I made him promise beforehand to deduct the alimony payment. I want nothing more than for my son to experience harsh social punishment. I have been getting reports that the payments are being regularly deposited by Michelle. I had been feeling down from this incident, but my other son, James, gently supported me. James gave me wonderful news. His wife was pregnant, with twins. Eventually, his wife safely gave birth, and I joyfully became the grandmother of 2 grandchildren. James's family decided to move right next to me. After being troubled by my younger son, my eldest gave me the gift of a peaceful life. Now, I am spending my peaceful days interacting with my sweet grandchildren.